Deacon Luke's younger brother, Andrew Doyle, was in my class here at Hayden.
Can you start your story?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Life of incredible. You can live a life of incredible heroic joy.
All right, well, welcome to all of our viewers. We're pleased to have with us Deacon Luke Doyle for at least a couple more days before he's ordained to the priesthood soon, and the recently ordained Deacon Andrew Gaffney, which we, so both of you are alums. Andrew 2013.
Yep.
And, sorry, I should have called you Deacon Andrew, because I've known you as Andrew for such a long time, as a lot of our people have. But then Deacon Luke will be a priest in just a couple of days here. And you were a graduate of 2008, I believe, right?
2008.
Okay,
That's right.
Excellent. So, awesome. So I guess this is the only week, as you mentioned earlier, that we might have two transitional deacons that are Hayden alums at the same time. So what's this week like for you guys?
For me, just freshly ordained as of Saturday. It was just a beautiful, wonderful weekend. So many graces, so many just beautiful moments from that. This week, just kind of hanging out before I start my summer assignment. I'll be at St. Patrick's in Kansas City with Father Mark Murtis for the summer.
What was the highlight of the ordination for you?
Honestly, I think the coolest moment was after being ordained a deacon and being vested was greeting all of the other deacons of the diocese. All of them come through and greet me as their new brother within that. Yeah, and receive a sign of peace from them.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Did you have a favorite deacon that greeted you?
Wasn't you?
Oh! Gosh.
They get along. No. And so, Deacon Luke, what are you most looking forward to about this Saturday as you're ordained a priest?
Oh my gosh, so many things. The first thing that comes to mind is just looking out as a newly ordained priest and seeing my entire life story in front of me. To be able to see family members, friends from grade school, from high school, friends I went to college with, friends from my seminary days, people that I've ministered to in lots of different avenues, and to just be able to reflect on what God has done in me and through me in my story to bring me to this point. And then just so much joy and excitement to see where the story continues.
That's awesome. No, that's great to hear. No, and God has a lot of great plans for you both, I'm sure. So, well, good. So, I know every vocation story is unique and every discernment is unique. Could you guys kind of tell us what brought you to this point, that you're on the very verge of the priesthood?
Yeah, so I am the second oldest in a family of 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. Every person has either been to Hayden, or shout out to Catherine, is a sophomore going to be a junior at Hayden. So Hayden is a significant part of the family story. The priesthood was something that was never really on my heart, like in a really powerful way, until I graduated from Hayden High School. There really were 3 things that happened during my time at Hayden, Father, that began to open my eyes and my heart to see that Jesus is alive. He's risen from the dead, and he wants a real friendship with me in a unique and personal way. So my junior year at Hayden, I was pulled in by a couple of other friends, one of whom is a religious sister now, who is a classmate who will make final vows in just a few months. And was really pulled in and encouraged by her to come in during my lunch periods and start praying the rosary with her and a couple of other friends. Mm-hmm. And that was really the first time in my life, this is my junior year in high school, that I prayed the rosary and was not forced to by family members or my grandma or things like that. And it was the first time that in praying those words of the Hail Mary, that it really hit me that there's going to come an end to my life. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a time when I am dying and I will meet Jesus face to face. And there is nobody I would rather have behind me at that moment saying, "This is a good guy, let him in, be merciful, come on, I know him," than Jesus' mom. And so for whatever reason, that thought really resonated deeply within me. And I kept coming back to pray the rosary for the first 15 minutes of our lunch period. And that's something that really grabbed my heart at the beginning of junior year here at Hayden, and I continued to participate in it both junior and senior year. And then there are a couple of other things that happened during my time at Hayden that ultimately just led me to really be convinced that Catholicism is true. It's not just a nice story, but it is true. Jesus is God. He is risen from the dead. He invites us to respond to that and to live a life in friendship with him. We don't have to, but we're invited to say yes. And so just as I began to strive more and more to live my life under the lordship of Jesus, to live as he called me to grow in friendship with him, there was this question of what I was supposed to do with my life that began to just pop up in my mind and my heart at different moments. It was not powerful enough when I graduated from Hayden to go to the seminary right away. So I went to Creighton University in Omaha. My plan was to become a doctor, just like both my parents. And over the course of my time there, that question, that thought of what am I supposed to do with my life, what is Jesus inviting me to do with my life, really began to pop up more and more and more. And so as I began to pray with it more and more, I began to realize that this is a legitimate question, and it's something that the best place for me to answer it is in a seminary. And so after my sophomore year at Creighton, I left and became a seminarian for the Archdiocese. Studied for 2 years at Cardinal Glennon College Seminary in St. Louis, and then was sent by Archbishop Naumann to your alma mater, the North American College in Rome. I was there a couple years before you, really enjoyed my time over there, but didn't have peace and freedom about whether or not this is actually what Jesus wanted me to do with my life, was to become a priest. So I ended up stepping away from seminary formation, completed a master's degree in theology at the Augustine Institute in Denver, taught the faith professionally in Kansas City and a few different areas, and ultimately I was on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land in 2018 and had a really powerful encounter with Jesus on the Sea of Galilee, where he revealed to me that he was calling me to be a priest, but that I was totally free to choose whether or not to respond to that he would love me either way, he would bless me either way, but that I was invited. And so I came back, I fought him for a year. He proved to me that he was calling me, and so I came back to the seminary, was ordained a deacon last year, and please God, I'll be ordained a priest in a couple days.
Awesome. You can really see in that, the Lord's invitation is very real. And for those that have experienced that, it's like you just can't bring yourself to say no,
Yes.
And it doesn't mean it's not a sacrifice, but and you left things behind, right, at every stage of that. You had to say, you in effect had to leave Creighton behind. You had to leave another professional life behind, but it's worth it, I guess, isn't it? So.
Jesus can never be outdone in generosity. And I look back to even when I was entering into my freshman year here at Hayden, and what was on my heart then? What did I want to do with my life? Well, I wanted to possibly be a professional athlete, or involved in medicine, or travel the world, or do something with the NFL. Mm-hmm. And it's so cool to see how I'm not even a priest yet, and in my story all of those things have come back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've been able to travel the world. I've studied biomedical ethics for the Archdiocese, and I'm doing ministry for doctors and medical professionals. I've gotten to teach NFL players and minister to them as they've converted. It's been amazing to see how when Jesus lets us dream with him and allows us to just share our hearts with him. He enjoys that and he blesses that and he wants us fully alive.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
So funny enough, in my class while I was here at Hayden, Deacon Luke actually had a younger brother whose name was Andrew Doyle. Funny story on that later. But my junior year, he had reached out to me to come and pray with him here in this chapel as part of our lunch period that Luke kind of passed down to each of his siblings for when he was here. And so I started coming and spending half of my lunch period here in this chapel. It was just really cool and beautiful to be back in this space, especially today. And it was right about this time that my dad came to me and said, you need to figure out what you're going to do with your future, right? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And already kind of having this habit of coming to the chapel, I thought, no better place to think about that, right? And really discern and ask Jesus what he wanted of me. And it just became evidently clear over and over and over again that this is what the Lord wanted me to do. He was calling me to go to the seminary. And I very much fought that for a little bit. I have 3 sisters, and all 3 of them went to KU. They all are in the medical profession. And so I wanted to go to KU and do some sort of medicine of some sort. And so I actually applied to KU, was accepted, planning on going there, but this whole time there's just this voice in the back of my head saying, no, right, this is not the right thing. So funny enough, the end of my senior year of high school, I was actually accepted by the Archdiocese and went to the seminary right out of college. Was at Conception Seminary College for 4 years. And although I had been coming and spending my lunch period here in the chapel, it was there that I really learned how to pray in a real deep way, of really hearing what the Lord was having to say through liturgy, through the Psalms, through Scripture, so many of those beautiful things that the monks teach us how to do. And then, after being at Conception for 4 years, I was sent to Denver to go to St. John Vianney Theological Seminary. And everybody's first year in Denver, we do the spirituality year. So you take a year off from academics and just focus on prayer, and take a year really centered in prayer to teach us how to pray deeply, how to pray well. And at the end of that year, I made the 30-day silent retreat, Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius. And it was on that retreat that the Lord moved me into a deep place of true freedom for the first time. I just remember sitting in this chapel, not this chapel, but the chapel where I was making my retreat up in South Dakota. And the Lord, for a couple of days, had really been taking my heart and teaching me freedom and showing me the beauties of the married life. And it really was that first time on that retreat where the Lord came to me and said, both these vocations are beautiful, right? You must choose one of these. My desire for you is this, but you are free to do whatever you would like. And in that moment of just true absolute freedom, seeing the beauty of both vocations, my heart was truly open and truly moved and free for the first time to say, no, this is what I want. And so just coming off that retreat, just having complete certainty that this is where the Lord was calling me to go. So I've done 3 more years of theology out in Denver, and just Saturday, a couple days ago, was ordained a deacon for the Archdiocese. And it's just been a beautiful couple of days living in this new state of life, figuring everything out, getting used to it.
Praise God. Yeah, I think that it's, I often get asked, as I'm sure you have too, like, what, this day and age, why does a young person like you that has other options and like other gifts and things like that, why would you, quote unquote, waste them right on the priesthood? But I mean, of course, we know differently. But I think the answer for most of us is like, love makes you do crazy things. Like, and having that, it's a true love of Christ, and of course, as people as well, and as an extension of that. But it's only when you fall in love with Him through prayer that that even begins to be there. And even then, it's an invitation out of love, right? So
one of my favorite lines from Scripture is from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, where he just says over and over again, it is through Christ's love that gives us strength, right? His love that urges us on, urges us forward. And it's a response in true freedom to that love that we're able to do everything that we are called by Him and asked to do.
I think another thing I see with you both is, what's obvious from this is that the moment you enter seminary, you don't have to be ready to be ordained tomorrow, right? That's never the case anyway, right? So, and even then, it's like you can enter and still be discerning. And of course, many men do discern out, as we say, and they may pursue another path in life under God's direction. But so talk about kind of what does a candidate go through as they apply for seminary, and do they have to be perfect when they apply, or can we kind of work with that? So.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is, do you have to be perfect? It's an overwhelming no.
We made it.
We made it somehow.
Yep.
I mean, I look back 8 years ago to when I first entered seminary, and I was a mess, right? I mean,
I remember. No,
yeah.
You remember how I was too. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just through, the molding our Lord does, the chipping away slowly of all of our attachments, informing us into whom He wants us to be and where He wants us to go, and really showing us where our gifts are and taking advantage of those gifts. But at the same time, realizing and understanding how weak we are and unable to do things on our own.
I think it's also worth mentioning too that sometimes we get it in our minds. I had it in mind when I was thinking about the priesthood, that the church is just in desperate need of anybody who is living in masculine to step forward, and she'll ordain her a priest, because we're just dying for priests. And there is a real need. We do need priests, but we're not looking just for anybody. We're looking for real men, for authentic men who love in a way that is unselfish, who are willing to make life about others, about Jesus, and about others, not about themselves. Men of integrity and of virtue, men of brave heart. And so, I think it's important, Father, to hold up too that there are a lot of guys that express an interest or desire that probably should step forward, that are those men, and that we would invite them and would really encourage them to make that step. But there are other guys who do step forward, and the church will say, you know what, this is not your call. This isn't what the Lord is inviting you to do with your life. And so, we are in need of priests, but we're in need of good priests. Yeah.
So what would you say to, especially our students and our young people that are alums and families, well, what if I kind of feel this pull, but either I've got issues I got to work through, or no, I don't want that. I don't want to give up the great gifts of a wife and children and other things. What would you say as they're thinking those things?
I can't help but think back to what my director of my retreat told me. In that moment in prayer I was talking about was, he said that if I did not feel this call to marriage, he would be deeply worried. Right? They say that the men who would make the best husbands would actually make the best priests as well. Because in a way we are called to lay down our life, not just for our family and our spouse, but for the church as a whole. And it's just, that's such a beautiful gift and vocation that, and I hear John Paul II's words ringing in my ears as well of, be not afraid of where the Lord's calling you to go. It may be scary, it may be difficult, you may not know what he's calling you to do in the midst of this. But as Luke said earlier, the Lord will not be outdone in generosity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think of St. Peter when Jesus invited him out of the boat in the Gospels. And as long as Peter, as his gaze was fixed on Jesus, he was focused on Jesus and he was walking towards Jesus, he could do anything, including supernatural things. And it was when Peter began to count and he began to distrust and began to focus on things that were not Jesus, that fear crept into his mind and his heart, and he began to sink. And I think that's very emblematic of my own story, that as I have been locked in, focused on Jesus, walking towards him, striving to live the truth in all ways that he is God, I have been very aware of this invitation from him to follow him. And then when I've started looking at, but it doesn't make sense, Jesus, because of this, or because I want this, or because I don't think you're really capable of doing that in my life. When I began to focus on things other than him, fear really crept in, and it inhibited me from being able to receive him and to say yes to him.
Sure.
And so, to banish fear from our hearts and to focus on Jesus, and to make whatever that vocation decision is, to make it looking at him, gazing at him, in friendship with him.
Awesome. So, I guess another big question mark for a lot of us, and I think it's something we have to discern through, and you mentioned, it's not a renunciation of marriage. If a man is not attracted to the great good of marriage, one of the greatest gifts that God gives to his people, he's probably not fit for the priesthood. And I think that part's at least very relatable, I think, for those that haven't discerned a vocation like this before. But still, it's a huge sacrifice. So why does the church ask this of her priests?
I think the simple answer that a lot of people give, just very pragmatically, right? It allows us to have the freedom to not be tied down in a way. Priests get called in the middle of the night for anointings to go visit those who are dying in that moment. And just throughout the day, we don't live like a 9-to-5 work job, right? So to be able to give of ourselves in a way that's radical and pragmatic at the same time to give back to the church, but spiritual.
I promised celibacy a year ago to the church, and so looking back on the first year of living out that promise, I think there are two things that I would say about it. The first is that there is a tremendous power that is present in prayer, that someone who has not made that promise just can't fathom probably, or can't comprehend, that my life is itself a prayer. That St. Paul tells us that we're called to make of our bodies living sacrifices, whole and pleasing to God. And celibacy is a tremendously beautiful way whereby I am able to take on the fears, the sufferings, the doubts, the joys of the people entrusted to my care, and not just like at 5 o'clock in the morning pray for them, but like throughout the course of the day as I feel that ache, as I feel that burn, that tension of of living celibately, being able to unite that suffering to the suffering of Jesus. And that's a really powerful way to pray for the needs of my people. And then also to let love grow within me, to be able to choose love, to choose that form of love. So I would say, the power of prayer. And then also just the conformity to Jesus, that Jesus was not a married man. Jesus gave himself totally for the good of his people, for his bride, the church. And I think if I am called in all ways to be conformed to him, that absolutely includes being espoused to who his bride is.
Right. And with that, one of my favorite images in exploring this topic just in prayer is this beautiful image in the history of the church of Christ the bridegroom. Right? Christ the bridegroom is pictured as this man who his hands are tied together. He's on his way to receive the cross. He's been scourged. He wears the crown of thorns. And just the image of that Christ never ceases to give himself to his bride, the church. And being ordained priest, you are configured to Christ, the bridegroom, in that. And right, just as the bridegroom never ceases to give himself to the bride, his church, we enter into that and just give of ourselves free, totally faithful, and fruitfully to the lives of the church, our people that we're called to serve.
It's such a tremendous gift too, Father, to be able to walk into an airport, to a restaurant, to a church, to a school, anywhere, wearing the Roman collar, and to be able to represent the most beautiful story that the world has ever seen, and that the story is true, and that I have bet my life on that.
Absolutely.
And so celibacy, I think, is a tremendously powerful witness to the world, that Deacon Luke doesn't just believe this is a bedtime story. Deacon Luke has bet his life on the truth that this is real, and that there is another life that awaits us, and that life is friendship with God. And I get to, in a beautiful way, start experiencing that life now, which is awesome.
Now, I love that point that I think both of you made, is that, this means something, this Roman, and I've had that experience too, only in my 3 years as a priest, but people, even though they may not be super well catechized on, say, the priesthood, or even the church at large, or even with the scandals that have kind of scourged the church, especially in recent decades, this still carries so much of a, and even if when I was a seminarian, it was like, well, sorry, I can't hear your confession, but I can talk to you, and now, of course, I can grant the sacraments as well. But I think there's also, the identity of the priest. Sometimes some may think of it in terms of power, and there is a power. Teach, govern, sanctify. Those are the three marks of what we're called to do as clergy. But with all that in mind, the fatherhood is present in all. It is not a teacher that distantly teaches, that it's not a one who governs and signs checks and keeps the parish running. And we don't just hand out the sacraments and walk away. We are fathers to our people, right? So I'm sure that was probably something that drew you to this vocation as well.
Absolutely. Right? And put, I guess, as simply as you can, love doesn't count. And I think it can be so easy, and it's a very cheap and easy temptation to think that we are discerning our vocation, when really all we're doing is thinking about what we want and how we can actualize that. And so that's not a judgment on, I've done that, that's not a judgment on any person who maybe falls to that. But when we discern what Jesus is inviting us to do with our life, that discernment has to be focused on him and on others. So not so much, what do I look like? What do I feel like? What do I think that I want will make me happy? Rather than looking inward, we've got to look outward in order to discover who we truly are. St. John Paul II taught what was called the law of the gift, that to the extent that I give myself away in love to Jesus and to other people, to that extent I become fully alive, fully free, fully who I was made to be. And I found in my own life that that's totally true. That to the extent that I've made that gift, whether it's 60%, 80%, 99%, to that extent I become fully alive, fully myself.
Right. One of my favorite things that happens being out and about and wearing the collar is, I'm sure this has happened many times to you guys as well, of people stare, right? They see the collar and their mouths just kind of drop and they just kind of stare, right? It's a witness. People know that this is the way we live our life, right? And I always find it such a beautiful moment in the midst of that, of just this, what is going on? Why is this guy here in that thing? It's a great moment to evangelize with joy. Right,
especially with joy.
With joy, right?
You really get the stares when they're like, he's a priest, and he's young, and he's happy?
Right.
As if that doesn't add up.
As a mentor of ours once said, as our British priest friend from Liverpool, England, when you walk out to the church, have a big smile on your face. It'll confuse the heck out of everyone.
Amen.
Right?
So,
Because they believe that, right, we've given this all up. We live this celibate life. How on earth can they be happy? When in reality, there's so much more even joy there. And it's like shocking them with that joy is an entry point into their life of showing that, no, this is true. I believe this, and I'm happy. I'm full of life. And I'm a normal guy at the same time in the midst of it.
And there are tired days as a priest, as you already know, but you'll find out much more vividly in good time. But even in those days, it's the good kind of tired, right? Even as a seminarian, that's the case, right? I mean, you go to bed knowing this was for a good purpose. I've even helped people. I've brought people closer to Christ through that. So what was like your favorite class, favorite experience at Hayden?
That's a great question.
It is.
Yeah. One of my favorite classes was AP US History. And as I look back on that, you might say, wow, really? History class made a priest? But it was really in that class that I began to learn how to study, to learn how to not just read for pleasure, but like read to learn, how to write a good argument, how to logically make a point. So Mr. Zelznak, I don't think teaches here anymore, but he was the teacher of that class. And he just really prepared me well to be able to rationally engage arguments that I both agreed with and that also disagreed with. And so I would look to that class as one of the more formative experiences I had in my time at Hayden. It was also a lot of fun. We did some role-playing, some debates. I enjoyed learning the story of our country. I would definitely point to that class.
Nice.
Yeah, for me, I look back fondly on Mr. Sandstrom, actually, who's the principal here now, right?
Yes.
He, in his I'm not the smartest, many will probably know that, but in the midst of taking pre-calculus with him while I was here, just the beauty in which he was able to connect math and theology, right? To show that, yes, there is this rational proof of God's existence. I think back to a week I think we spent on just the Fibonacci sequence, which can be found in nature all around us, right? In the way a shell has been constructed on a snail, or in a leaf, or within a tree. It's like God's fingerprints are visible within our world, and they can be calculated, they can be shown, they can be proven.
And not that, of course, theology is important as well, but what that says, I think, and John Paul II really talks about how the human foundation is so important, right? And it's more fundamental than the spiritual, or than because if those values aren't instilled, like hard work, logic, all these things, that may preclude us from praying more devoutly, or from thinking about what's best for ourselves, right? And how else did Hayden kind of prepare you for not just maybe the priesthood, but for life?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think there were a number of friendships that I still experience in this life, 12 years past outside my time at Hayden, that I was able to start during my years here. And it's so beautiful for me to be able to look back and to see when I made the choice to follow Jesus with my life, that precedes my vocation story. Like, once I realized Jesus is real, he wants a relationship with me, and I want to live a life consistent with the life he invites me to say yes to. Once I made that decision, I began to meet people here at Hayden that it seemed had also made that decision. And it's so cool to look back and to see how when you bet your life, when you bet your friendship, when you bet things on Jesus, Jesus is eternal. And so those relationships, those things are going to stand the test of time. And so, rather than friendships that were rooted just in baseball or in soccer, which I certainly had those, the ones that really have lasted throughout time are the ones that were built rooted in Christ. And one friendship that I would definitely point to is with a girl who was named Anna Hall, who was in my class at Hayden. And she now goes by the name Sister Mary of the Blessed Trinity. And she is a religious sister who's evangelizing the people of Iceland. And I feel like it's kind of a love story that Jesus has written in my heart to be able to remind me of her friendship and her prayers for me as I have sought his own will in my life. That of all the days that I get to celebrate my first Mass as a priest, it's her feast day, which is the feast day of the Holy Trinity. And so it's just a beautiful reminder for me that friendship rooted in Christ is is present here at Hayden. It's something that any student can find and say yes to, and it really blessed me in really beautiful ways.
Awesome.
You know, what stands out to me is just Hayden's motto of enter to learn, leave to serve, in a way that just became very real during my time here, of really taking in what I was being taught, but there was always this outlook of how is what you are learning pointing towards how you're living your life, right? And living that in a relationship with Jesus and bringing others into that and serving others by what we learned on a day-to-day, whether it be in math or science or in the theology classes. There's always this outward focus of what can we do with what we learned today, be in service of our neighbor.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely. And I think it's these can be a very difficult 4 years, to say the least, for almost anyone, I think, definitely. But so what would you say to, students that are kind of still in that struggle of faith, still in that, maybe the Lord has pulled at their heart in some way or another. Maybe they have a great relationship with our Lord at this point, but what would you say is they're kind of trying to find their way?
Once again, just John Paul II, he's one of my heroes of just be not afraid to trust in the Lord, because he will do wonders and beauties with your life. Looking back to those almost 10 years ago when I first started coming to this chapel, and just really seeing how, I fought against where the Lord is wanting me to go, and it finally came to that one day where it was like, I have to trust that what you're calling me to do and where you are wanting me to go, you're going to do beautiful things with that. And he truly has. It's that relationship of trust with him that he will do just amazing, incredible things. And to not be afraid to let Jesus into that and take you where he's leading.
And you talk about someone that had every reason to not trust by the world's standard. John Paul, all the suffering he went through, and I think he is an inspiration for us all in that way. So, yeah.
I think a question that Jesus asked in the Gospels is the first one he asked actually comes to mind. Anytime Jesus asks a question in the Gospels, this is God. God is timeless. When God speaks, it eclipses time. So anytime Jesus asks a question in the Gospels, pay attention, because he's also asking you. And at the beginning of the Gospel of John, Jesus asks a question to two guys that kind of start awkwardly following after him, and it's almost like, hey, who is that? What's he doing? I don't know. What's he talking about? And then Jesus turns and looks at him, and he says, what are you looking for? And I think to anybody who is in this tension of is this Catholic thing real? Is Jesus real? Should I be in a religion class? Should I not? There were students like that in my time in Hayden too. I think those are good, important, significant questions to be able to ask. I think a very pertinent one that every person should ask is, what am I looking for? What do I want out of life? Am I looking for pleasure? Am I looking for as much power as I can possibly have? Am I looking to make as much money as I can possibly have? What is it that I'm looking for? Because you're probably not going to find what you're looking for if you don't know to ask and to start searching. And Jesus is the fulfillment of everything that we desire. He is the path to freedom and to life. He tells us that he's come that we may have life and have it to the full, have it in abundance. So that would be my question is, what are you looking for?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Yeah. So I think it's also important to note, as we've iterated many times throughout our history, we are assisting the family as the primary educators of our children, right? And knowing both of your families pretty well myself, we can't pretend that they weren't a huge part of your vocation. In some cases, the biggest influence on you. So, what would you say to families as they're making this big investment in this great school? How would you encourage them in their mission as parents?
Catholic education is worth it. We cannot love what we do not know, and choosing to make that investment, choosing to make that unselfish gift. To give your child a Catholic education, that's a game changer in their life, in the life of the family, and in the life of the world, because it presents to the youth of the future, our future leaders in this world, in this church, the truths of who we are as Christians. And there is no other school, there's no other school system in 2021 that is going to teach the truth of the gospel, the dignity of the human person, the beauty of unselfish love. And those are the secrets that we need in order to preserve our culture of life and a culture of authentic love. And so, love is worth it. Freedom is worth it. Love doesn't count. And so whatever that price is, whatever the cost, it's worth it. And I think as a teacher in a Catholic high school, not here at Hayden, but as a theology teacher, it's also pretty evident to teachers whether or not the faith is lived and embraced and communicated in the home. And just from the other side of the classroom, I could honestly say that a theology teacher at Hayden is an assistant to the parents whose primary responsibility is to teach the faith at home. But it is really difficult to teach the faith when it isn't lived or embraced or acknowledged within the home. Because rather than a student experiencing it for 100 hours a week, they experience it for 2 or 2.5 or 3 hours a week. And that's not enough to make a culture change, to make a significant impact and dent in the lives of our young people.
Yeah. I mean, I look and I think of my own parents who, just knowing everything they gave up and sacrificed to send me and my 3 sisters through Catholic education, they would be the first to tell you that, we don't have theology degrees. We don't know a lot of the faith. We weren't well catechized, but we know what's important. I think of my dad, who is a very much a morning person. I am not. He's an early riser. But a couple times a week, whenever he could, he'd get up even earlier to be able to go to Mass in the morning because he knew he wouldn't have time throughout the day. So just the way he lived that out. And to my mother, who for close to 30 years, for once every week for an hour, she's had a holy hour, an adoration hour. So they would not be people who know the faith amazingly well or have a theology degree by any means, but they really showed us how to live that out. And how important their faith was to say, we're going to sacrifice these goods within our own life to be able to send you to a place for your future.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, that's kind of all of what I have. We've been here for a while, and I think we could probably keep going for quite some time if we were to try. I know this is a busy week for you guys, and time to celebrate, time to prepare, so of course we want to respect that. But I guess just know, and I'm sure you do know, but the Hayden community is very proud of you both. I personally cherish my friendship that I've had with you well before my time here at Hayden, and I'll continue to do that. It's a great year for Hayden, and we're just so thankful for you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Of course. All right.
Thank you.